Formula E has grown incredibly since its first race in 2014, but it hasn't been without its fair share of ups and downs along the way, including some absolutely jaw-dropping crashes. So today we're going to show you the top 10 worst Formula E crashes of all time. Imagine high-speed impacts, pile-ups, and incredible last-lap madness. These crashes have it all. So buckle in and hold on tight. These are the top 10 worst Formula E crashes ever. First up is this absolutely incredible moment from the 2014 Beijing E-Prix. In motorsports, it doesn't get much better than a tight, hard-fought battle on the last lap, especially when it's for the lead of the race. And to make this one even better, Nicolas Prost and Nick Heidfeld were coming up to the very last corner of the last lap, fighting for victory in the first Formula E race ever. Nick Heidfeld made a move to the inside of Prost, and out of nowhere, Prost moved across and drove straight into Heidfeld in a very questionable defensive move. The two made contact and Heidfeld was sent flying uncontrollably towards the wall. He hit the apex and it sent him flying into the air, and he instantly smashed into the barrier at full speed while airborne. In an absolutely horrific crash, his car stopped suddenly and it was smashed to pieces, with onlookers fearing the worst.
Into the last corner of the race, Heidfeld goes to the inside line and they make contact and they're both off, and that's an accident for Nick Heidfeld. He has gone off the circuit. The two of them come together in the final corner.
Luckily for him, he was able to climb out and was unharmed after this nasty crash. Next up is one of the most dramatic crashes in the history of Formula E. Sebastian Buemi was driving flat out in practice in a season where he was fighting closely for the championship. He needed everything to go smoothly as qualifying for the tight street circuit was up next. But suddenly, one small mistake cost him badly. He misjudged the chicane and slammed his front left wheel into the inside wall while approaching the chicane, sending him completely out of control. He then slammed into the wall head first, and the impact was so intense that Buemi's car was completely destroyed. And to make matters worse, after bouncing off the chicane, he was then fired into the outside wall for even more damage.
And he's in the wall! Sebastian Buemi, championship leader, out of the second free practice session. That's a big one for Buemi.
With his head in his hands, he knew it was a very costly mistake. Buemi was okay, but his car most certainly was not. The 2021 season was a very enjoyable one, and it also had its fair share of big crashes. One of those happened at the Rome E-Prix weekend, where we saw a very strange crash in Practice 1. What should have been a problem-free practice session turned into a heart-stopping spectacle, as Oliver Turvey's Neo 333 car slammed into the rear end of Jake Dennis's BMW and Jean-Éric Vernet's DS Tachita. The tension was high as Turvey, who was oblivious to the completely stationary vehicles ahead, plowed straight into them. The crash sent debris flying all over the track and left the commentators in shock. The impact was intense, with 3 cars being completely wrecked out of nowhere. The drivers were lucky to not be seriously injured in this very scary incident. And if you're enjoying watching this, please consider liking this video and hitting subscribe for more quality motorsports content just like this. With that being said, let's check out this insane crash from the soaking streets of Seoul in 2022. The pileup from the inaugural Seoul E-Prix was something that fans will remember for a long time. It was an exciting race, especially since we got to see these world-class drivers navigate the wet conditions. But all of a sudden, everything changed. As the cars approached a big braking zone, they started to hit a bad patch on the track, and it sent them completely out of control. One after another, they began to crash headfirst into the barriers, and some cars made huge contact with others, as they all went off in exactly the same place.
Buemi up on top, Nato in there, Turvey in there,
Askew in there, Cassidy in there as well. Very weird accident, that.
It was absolute chaos in the strangest possible way. The slippery track conditions and poor visibility were to blame for the crazy 8-car pileup. It's definitely a crash that fans will remember for a long time to come. Another unforgettable crash happened in the 2021 Diriyah E-Prix, and it doesn't get much scarier than this one. The Diriyah E-Prix was one of the most highly anticipated races on the calendar, with drivers looking forward to taking on this exciting street circuit. But driver Alex Lynn didn't know that he was about to be taken on the scariest ride of his life. That's because the race was the scene of one of the most dramatic crashes in Formula E history. While driving for Mahindra Racing, he was involved in this horrific collision. Lynn was trying to overtake Mitch Evans when the two made contact. The impact was so severe that Lynn's car flew into the air, flipped over, landed on its roof, and smashed into the wall at crazy speed. The camera crew barely caught the crash as it happened so fast. Miraculously, Lynn was uninjured in the crash, but it's one he will remember for a long time. And while we're talking about high-speed, super scary crashes, it doesn't get much more intense than this one. The terrifying crash at the 2023 Rome E-Prix will go down in the history books, as we witnessed one of the worst crashes in recent memory. Sam Bird's Jaguar spun uncontrollably at high speed and went straight into the wall. His car couldn't have come to rest in a worse position, right in the middle of the track. It left no room for other cars to avoid it, and they found that out the hard way. A number of drivers hit the wall trying to avoid Bird, taking big damage in the process. But it was Sebastian Buemi and Eduardo Mortara who came off the worst, driving into Bird's car at high speed. The three drivers suffered massive hits and completely destroyed the race cars. It was the biggest crash of the 2023 season, and fortunately the drivers came out uninjured. Another driver who suffered a scary shunt was Bruno Senna back in 2015. On the prestigious Monaco circuit, Senna would have been hoping to emulate some of his uncle's success and come out on top. And he did, but just not in the way he wanted. After a messy first corner, there was a pileup of overly ambitious drivers in turn 2, and it ended in disaster. Senna made contact with Daniel Abt, and it sent him flying into the air at an almost 90-degree angle, making for an incredible scene. His car jolted over the top of Abt and made heavy contact with the ground, in a very scary moment for all the drivers involved in this pileup.
Car hit the wall.
Oh my goodness! That's Bruno
car hit
Senna.
the wall and Senna just went straight over the back of him. Wow, that could have been a really nasty one.
It was not the start that Formula E wanted on the streets of Monte Carlo, but this moment will forever be etched in the history of the series as one of the most dramatic opening laps ever. Whilst we're talking about big pileups, let's have a look at this outrageous moment from the race in the Big Apple. During the Formula E New York City E-Prix, rain soaked the track and left drivers fighting to hang on in the tricky conditions, on a surface that resembled a skating rink more than a racetrack. And soon after, disaster struck. As Nick Cassidy approached turn 6, he aquaplaned straight off and smashed the wall. Lucas Di Grassi instantly followed suit and crashed into Cassidy's stricken car hard. But it wasn't over just yet, as Stoffel Van Dorne got involved, having the exact same crash as the others. He aquaplaned into Cassidy and Di Grassi at full speed, making massive contact with both drivers. The multi-car pileup was one of the scariest moments ever seen in Formula E, resulting in a chaotic few moments as onlookers and commentators tried desperately to see what was happening out of the dangerously wet track. It was one of the most unpredictable and chaotic days in Formula E. And while we're talking about chaotic and dramatic moments, this one in 2021 had it all. The 2021 Berlin E-Prix had one of the wildest starts ever in Formula E. Title contenders Mitch Evans and Eduardo Mortara were hoping to get a clean getaway and fight their way to the championship, but their hopes disappeared instantly. When the lights went green, Evans did not move at all, leaving him completely stranded on the grid. And unfortunately for Mortara, he did not see Evans at all, and drove straight into the back of him at full acceleration, wrecking both cars.
We go green in Berlin, and Evans doesn't move, and he's been hit! Mitch Evans has been hit by Eduardo Mortara, 2 title contenders out instantly. What an utter disaster for them!
They were forced to retire from the race, and their championship hopes had to be deferred for another year. It was perhaps the most unlucky race start possible, and will go down in the history books as a classic title-deciding race. And talking about title deciders, it doesn't get much better than this one. In the 2016 season, Sebastian Buemi and Lucas Di Grassi came into the final race level on points. Drama was sure to unfold. Let's set the scene. Buemi was on pole, his teammate Prost was on second, and Di Grassi was third. When the lights went out, they barreled down towards the first braking zone at top speed, and Di Grassi knew he had to make a move on Prost to get closer to his championship rival Buemi. But nobody could have predicted what would happen next. Di Grassi launched his car on Prost for an overtake, and in the process hit Buemi, taking both himself and Buemi down the runoff immediately. It was a truly unbelievable moment, with both championship contenders off the track at the very first corner. Buemi ended up with the championship, but this was definitely the most dramatic opening lap crash in the history of Formula E. And with that last lap madness, we must call a close to this video. With races ruined, friendships fried, and titles decided, these were the worst Formula E crashes ever. Please leave a comment and let us know which crash you thought was the worst, and tell us if we missed any. Please smash the like button and subscribe for more motorsports content. This has been Racers Reverie. See you in the next video.